A very good morning to all of you. Welcome to today's news analysis. We are doing the Indian Express papers, Chandigarh edition. Now you can see the important topics have been mentioned. So first of all, it is BRICS. With reference to BRICS, we were expecting the meeting of President Xi and Prime Minister Modi in the context of the border dispute between the two countries. So most likely a meeting has taken place even at the foreign secretary level. So meeting has taken place. So hopefully things may be better in times to come. Okay. So this is one thing. This was within the BRICS, but a private meeting between the two leaders. Now, within BRICS, a decision was made to expand BRICS. That is, more countries to be included. So presently, BRICS has 5 countries, as you can see, BRICS 5 plus 6 other countries have been added, so that we will check. Okay, now this tells me that we have covered this news over here on the front page. Okay, moving on. We know that floods are taking place, landslides are there, floods in the northern plains and landslides particularly in Himachal. Now we have 2 articles which say that man-made factors are responsible. They are natural disasters, nobody is denying that, but we are made more vulnerable because of carelessness of human issues, human factors or anthropogenic factors. Besides, we have the issue of stubble burning which takes place. So this is the right time to take initiatives, to take measures concerning stubble burning. So Punjab government is, today we have some updates from Punjab government, some measures that for stubble burning they are taking. Besides, I will add more measures I have added, so that will help you with your exam. Okay. Article 370 arguments are going on in the Supreme Court. Now we have 2 more arguments from the government side. Now here there is reference of Attorney General and Solicitor General. So from pre-perspective, we will look at these 2 offices. Now from the editorial and opinion section. So one editorial we are doing with reference to BRICS. Uncharted Waters, that is the heading. And then there is an opinion that I'm interested, that is growth and the tier 2 cities. We get 2 very important themes over there. So one is, as you can see, growth and tier 2 cities. So we should prioritize tier 2 cities. Emphasis have been given on tier 1 cities. So that is one theme. The other theme which is mentioned, not hidden in the title, it is that we are focusing on public infrastructure. We're talking about public infrastructure, hard infrastructure, but we should also focus on soft infrastructure, particularly human infrastructure. That will give much higher dividends in terms of growth. So that was the theme. Now moving on to the international section, a lot of articles actually with reference to Taiwan, Russia, Wagner Group, etc. Of particular interest was US export curbs on China on high-end technology. And with reference to this, China has responded by TTP and Qming. So this we will study. By the way, Qming in Chinese means enlightenment. Then from the economy section, we have the G20 meeting with reference to commerce is taking place in Jaipur. So we have the ministers from India saying that we should ease barriers of trading and promote the MSME sector. Prime Minister Modi is saying promote MSME sector. Besides, we have updates on India-US bilateral trade. We have update on India-UK free trade agreement, which is again a bilateral trade. Plus, we had the meeting of the MPC, a monetary policy committee of the RBI, and they have raised the issue of inflation. They have decided on the interest rates. Basically status quo on interest rates. Okay. So first news I have already covered. Xi and Modi agree to intensify efforts for expeditious disengagement along LAC. So meeting has taken place between the 2 leaders, and probably directives will go to the military leadership at the disputed areas, LAC region. With update on Chandrayaan 3, everything is fine. The rover is working fine. It is moving around on the surface of moon. Now, what is the name of the rover? The name of the rover is Pragyan, and it landed on the surface of the moon using a lander whose name was Vikram, and it has the following payload modules. So yesterday I told you to study about each of them, right? In the explainer section it is there, or you can visit ISRO. You open Chandrayaan 3, there is a PDF. On that also these payloads are explained. So ILSA, Ramba, Chaste, so all these are mentioned. Shape, all these are covered. BRICS expands from 5 to 11. First of all, where did BRICS summit took place? It took place in Johannesburg, South Africa. And the BRICS obviously has 5 countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Now it has been expanded to include 11 countries. These new countries are Saudi Arabia, Iran, UAE, Egypt, Ethiopia, and Argentina. Fine, so new members have been added. Moving on. This is with reference to floods. Encroachments coupled with nature's fury. In Punjab, the worst flood in decades is man-made. Right? So decades, man-made. Okay. So encroachments, people living onto the floodplains, people encroaching onto the wetlands. So wetlands are basically lakes, or maybe at the present times there no water is flowing. So cities or townships have come, or people have started farming. But eventually when the water comes, more people are affected. So imagine if you're on rivers, right? Presently no water is flowing, but when the rains come, or when there is too much of water that is coming, so that passage you are staying, naturally you'll be more vulnerable. So that's what. So one is that natural factors because of which the floods take place. But besides this, we have made ourselves more vulnerable because people are moving into the areas which are flood prone. And more importantly, it's those people who are pushed, who don't have a choice. So the poorer sections, more marginalized sections, they are more likely to be affected in floods. So there is a social dimension also. Okay, next. Now I see that we can add to this issue of floods, right? We can add more pointers. Here only encroachment issue is mentioned, and I've mentioned these two. We can mention about the issue of concrete jungles. The urban areas have become concrete jungles. So concrete does not allow the percolation of water seeping into the soil. So that is one more issue. So water is not going away. Plus more and more of these concrete jungles have come by replacing the forest. Forests help in containing the floods. Okay. Besides, we have not managed the drainage systems, the traditional water paths known as chos, rivulets known as chos. So those are not very well managed, and this has also resulted in floods, because if the chos were functioning well, the water would have flowed from this path. But because these are choked because of lack of dredging or whatever reason, the water is coming out of this and spreading into other areas where human settlements are there. Then we have also seen the issue of dam management, right? Recently, some experts environmentalists have analyzed data about water coming into the dams and going outside of the dams. So the dams tend to store more and more of water, and allowing more of inflow, but less water is going out. So when eventually, let's say some event like rain or more of water is coming from the side, when there are more rains, and when there are more rains here, there'll be more rains here also. So at that time the dam is full and they discharge more water. So when they discharge more water, there is more water in the lower areas. Right, inflow of the dam is obviously from higher areas to the lower areas. So there are more water, more floods taking place. The problem is aggravated because the dams were forced to release water. Same thing could have been planned beforehand. So with advanced science that we have, advanced technology, satellite imagery, simulation data, we could have avoided this situation. Okay. Besides, we can also add the point of planning. Disaster cycle. So disaster cycle is not very well managed. First of all, we know that during this time of the year, uh, there is the likelihood of a flood. We can plan better. So that can happen. And talking about the plan, how about talking about community engagement? How about having state disaster response force? So those also have to be put in place beforehand. And we should also work, disaster cycle should also include the dam management, the upkeep of the drainage system. So those people who are encroached, they are more vulnerable. So these are the traditional floodplains. So these should also be covered. So poor planning on the, poor management of the disaster management cycle is again a point. So I've covered a lot of points with reference to it, a man-made crisis. Things are bad, but we make it worst with this. Okay, now we come to this landslide issue. So I want to focus on two things. You can see how the buildings are collapsing. High-rise buildings, they're collapsing. Things are very, very deplorable at this point of time. For years, experts raised red flags, danger signs, buildings blocking natural drainage, overburdened hills, unstable slopes. So you get it, you get the point. Even if you don't read the article, you get the main points, main issues, which has led to landslides. And you have 3 points easily with reference to the landslides. Okay. So we have these massive, I've consolidated these points. So we have these massive buildings. Earlier smaller buildings were there, but now bigger buildings are there. So one is they are blocking the natural drainage, everywhere these things are coming up. So mountains traditionally have these water paths, so these are blocked. Plus bigger buildings means more people are living into it. Imagine if there's something happens, more people will get affected. Right, so loss of life, loss of property will actually get accentuated. Okay, so this is it. Then the cutting of mountains. We have been talking about the vertical cutting of the mountains. Remember, this is the mountain. Let's say for making of the road or whatever, you cut it like this, you cut it like this. So the slope becomes vertical, and the more vertical it is, more likely to things are to fall downwards, more vulnerability to landslide. If the slope is less steep, less chances of things to fall. So cutting of mountains are taking place. Although everybody knows this should not be done, but it is being done. So slope stabilization is affected, the drainage system is affected. Now for this, there are some guidelines. There are some permissible level. You have to cut the road at some extent. For example, for making of the road, you have to cut the road, mountain, no doubt about it. But it is cut beyond the permissible levels, much beyond actually than the permissible levels. Then there are building codes in place, or we can say the IS codes for construction in place, Indian standard codes. But these are not abided by because it raises the development costs. So here you have these things. Obviously landslides will take place, but we have aggravated the problem because of carelessness, or we can say callousness, better word. Okay, so yes, so this is the issue. Now you have so many points over here. You have seen the deplorable condition. Obviously people are affected. Imagine from the government point of view, right? I'm basically talking about the case study now. Previously we have had case studies on a particular problem that was there in the news, and they ask you as to what policy has to be made. So let me frame this. You see the issue, you can identify the different stakeholders over here, right? You can visualize, you can make a note of it. Now imagine that you are a government official, you are a very senior official, let's say of the rank of a secretary, and the chief minister of the state has trust on you. He has asked you to identify the problem, right, and frame a policy as to how the rehabilitation shall be done, how the people who are affected, the rehabilitation should be done, and how these problems can be stopped in the future or reduced in the future. So you have to frame a policy so that the chief minister can act on it. That's your job as IAS actually. So, and that is what the paper is asking you. We have previously had a question with reference to Tutukudi crisis, and there they asked the similar question. So I'm not out of place when I'm telling you to write on these lines. Okay, so 250 words, 300 words you should write. You should have a, but before that you have to have a stakeholder analysis, and your points have to have proper justification. Everybody knows what has to be done, but justification, etc., are important. More important actually. Now coming to coming to the issue of stubble burning. Punjab offers 50% subsidy on surface seeders. Surface seeders, as the name goes, this is the field on the surface. Seeding will take place, so 50% subsidy is being provided. So this is as part of the Punjab government's crop residue management scheme. This is a scheme under which the farmers are being provided subsidy on buying certain machines which can help reduce the issue of stubble burning. Now, I hope stubble, paddy cultivation takes place. Let me explain this first. Paddy cultivation takes place. Imagine these are the paddy crops. The grains grow on this. So paddy takes place during the Kharif season. It ends in October-November period. And immediately after that, Rabi season starts and we have to cultivate wheat. And it has to be done in timely manner because by April, harvesting season starts. So October, November to April is the time period. So limited time period. The land has to be cleared, harvested. The land has to be cleared from this stubble. Once the grain is taken out, the grain is cut, it is harvested. And then these things remain. These things are then burned. So what alternatives can be done? That is the basically stubble burning, how to manage this stubble. Should we burn it, whatever? So that is stubble management. Okay. So under Punjab government is having this crop residue management scheme under which they are providing super SMS, again seeding machine actually, super seeder, smart seeder, happy seeder, zero till, paddy, straw chopper, etc., etc., etc. Machines are being provided basically. Okay. Now what else can be done? Right, okay, fine, hardware is there. Besides this, we can use genetically modified crops. Presently, we are using Pusa 121, which needs we are using Pusa 44, which needs 160 days. If we can reduce the farming cycle to 120 days by using Pusa 121, so we have adequate time for the farmers to clear this straw, so they don't have to burn it, right? So they can clear this straw. So this can be promoted by the government. So Pusa 121 is there. Then what do you do with this stubble if you don't burn it? We can actually use this stubble for making ethanol. Ethanol is a fuel, right? So we can have ethanol industries which decompose, which processes this ethanol, processes the stubble into ethanol, which can be further used as a fuel. So the stubble now has economic value. The factories would be willing to pay for the stubble. So farmers will get additional income. You can add the line on doubling farmers' income. Okay. Besides this, we can make cakes out of the stubble, which can be used for fodder. So in Nagpur, there is a Nagpur initiative in which briquettes or small cakes of this thing is being formed. Plus, it can also be used as a fuel elsewhere. So that can also be done. And one more is residue incorporation. That is, the stubble is there, right? The stubble, it is tilled back into the soil with the seeds. So the stubble is still organic matter. It can be used as a nutrient. So tilling it back into the soil. So that can be done. Besides, the stubble can also be used for mulching. But it can be used for mulching so that it basically a cover of straw on the field. So that can be done. It can help retain the moisture, etc. So those are the benefits because soil is not directly exposed to the sun. So you have good points over here. A lot of research has gone in. Actually, I have my own notes. So just scrolling now. Yes. Previously, we had National Medical Council, a statutory body which regulates the conduct of medical professional and medical education. So a guideline had come which said that doctors should only prescribe generic medicines. So one is branded medicines and other is generic medicine. So same salt but from a lesser known brand. These are much cheaper. Now there are concern among doctors also that doctors tend to, I'm talking about medical ethics, which comes under applied ethics in GS4. So doctors have a conflict of interest. You will find the medical reps trying to promote their brand. You go to a doctor, you will find 5-6 people sitting, sales people who are trying to tell the doctor that you please prescribe our drugs. And these tend to be more expensive. So here the government guideline was to issue generic medicines also. It will help reduce the out-of-pocket expenditure. It will help the interest of the poor. By the way, there are Jan Aushadhi Kendras where you can buy generic medicines and they're very much cheaper. For example, a sachet of vitamin D, which is in the market for 50-60 rupees, it is available for 10 rupees, 10 to 15 rupees in Jan Aushadhi Kendra. So it's a generic medicine. So doctors are not happy with this decision. Plus, they are saying that, besides the obvious, they are saying that this will make them dependent on what medicines are available in the pharmacy. They have to prescribe only those drugs. Next, we have Article 370. So this is going on in Supreme Court. Now we have two arguments, both coming from the government. So when it says, when both coming from the government, and government is being represented by Attorney General, which is a constitutional office provided for in Article 76 of the Constitution. And to assist Attorney General, there is Solicitor General. Now, please, one important point I want to tell you, Attorney General is a constitutional post, but Solicitor General is not mentioned in the Constitution. Here it is, right? You can see this. Okay. Now, there is one more thing for prelims that you should keep in mind. Within the Constitution, there are certain schedules. There is one particular schedule which is of interest, is the second schedule of the Constitution. Now, constitutional posts, we expect them to be there on the second schedule. Now, here you would find that Attorney General is not mentioned. So, which of this is mentioned, which of this is not mentioned are important. Right? So, just keep an eye on this also. Solicitor General, of course, no chance. Okay, now what is the Attorney General is saying? He's saying due process was followed. It was not a fraud on the Constitution. Making Article 370 inoperative. And he says that when we are talking about amendment, when we are discussing this case on Article 370, we have to make a call if we are talking about nation or preserving the Constitution. National interest is revocation of Article 370. Preservation is to see if the right process was followed. This is implied actually. So does the means justify the ends? So he has brought in this argument that end is important, revocation of Article 370, but the means, how important are these? Okay, we all know that when that happened, 367 was changed. It provided for how the Constitution is read. The governor was deemed as the state the state legislature of Jammu and Kashmir was put into suspended animation. The governor became the legislature, and governor is the representative of the president. The governor, since the legislature is the voice of the people, the legislature was deemed as the constituent assembly. Now, since legislature is not there, so governor is seen as the constituent assembly, but governor is the representative of the president. So president becomes the constituent assembly, and president order, by the president order, the 370 is made inoperative. You can see the thing that has happened over here. So he's saying it is not a fraud on the Constitution. Due process was followed. Fine. So this is what the Attorney General is saying. By the way, there is mention of Article 3. So he's saying that Attorney General is saying that it was consistent with Article 3. Article 3 basically provides for reorganization of these states, changing the boundaries, altering the boundaries, increasing, reducing the boundaries, creation of the states, changing the name of the states. All that is under Article 3. Okay, moving on. What is the Solicitor General saying? Solicitor General is saying that the son of Hari Singh, so it's Karan Singh. So Karan Singh had said previously that the state of Jammu and Kashmir has completely surrendered and its sovereignty to the Union of India. So there is no question about this Article 370, Article 370, etc. So it's surrendered. So there is no, ultimately the sovereign is the Indian Constitution, and so the process is justified. Okay, so 2 articles I said. So one is Uncharted Waters and growth in the tier 2 cities. Let me zoom out. Let me show you which all articles more were there. So one is, the other article I'm missing is not doing today is the onion diktat. It is upon the export duty on onions. Right. So recently it was announced 20% export duty. So it is, the newspaper is basically saying that this is not a correct move. It undermines the interest of the farmer, plus it affects India's credibility as a global supplier of agriculture. Plus it is inconsistent with the farm reforms and the farm laws that the government itself had brought in previously. Again, this I'm not doing. The chess one, the politics of fault lines, again I'm not doing over here. Misplacing the warning of anti-tobacco messages on OTT shows is a bad idea. Again, this one I'm not covering. So these 2 articles. So let's do this one, Uncharted Waters. So Uncharted Waters is basically talking about the BRICS expansion. So India had concern about expansion of the BRICS. China had proposed it. China said more countries should be added to BRICS, it should be expanded. So now we have 5 to 11, India welcomed it. So now we are on uncharted waters. We do not know how these countries will influence the functioning of the BRICS. So India was concerned that it will become pro-China, but India supported this idea. Now here we are being told that India actually did not oppose this, but India wanted a clarity on what criteria new members shall be added. So that is one point. The next point that is mentioned is that BRICS has a common agenda to promote multipolar world. It was seen as an alternative to what should we say? An alternative to the West, the Western Bloc. So, and the voice of the global South. Now, with addition of more members over here, the possibility of BRICS coming onto a common or a more purposeful common agenda, the chances are less because more members are there, so more disagreements will take place. So chances of a consensus comes down when there are more people. When there are less, there are more chances of consensus. But you know what? BRICS already has very diverse members with a lot of tensions amongst themselves. So I don't know how much it really does affect. So that's what it is, uncharted waters. We don't know what will happen. Next is growth in the tier 2 cities. Growth and the tier 2 cities. Okay. So yeah, there are 2 themes over here. So the first theme is, that is, we have this development, but the development is skewed in the favor of tier 1 cities. Look at Delhi, Bombay, Chennai, Calcutta. More and more of this development is actually centered, more of the funds are going towards the tier 1 cities. We should prioritize the tier 2 and the tier 3 cities, right? And that is prudent actually, because the tier 1 cities are going beyond their carrying capacity. Look at the congestion, look at the housing problem. Now, these are not points that are mentioned, but there are problems with the tier 1 cities. The infrastructure is not able to cope with it. we need to develop on this tier 2 and tier 3 cities. I think this would be in line with the idea of sabka saath sabka vikas, inclusive growth, addressing the regional disparity and growth. So the growth should be diversified, focused on these areas also. I forgot to mention the schemes that the government has, but Amrut is there, Hriday is there, Prasad is there. The different schemes are there for promotion of development in tier 2, tier 3 cities. And in village areas, for village areas, there is a scheme known as R Urban. That is rural areas with urban-like amenities. So we should prioritize. We should not want youth to be having no avenues in their own cities and moving out to in congested areas in tier 1, etc. We're having the slum issue also. So that's one thing. By the way, on slums, we have a very good video on our channel on slum. Very rare the topic is covered. Okay, next point. We say we are focusing on infrastructure development. In fact, in our videos also. So infra has to be promoted, public infrastructure, physical infrastructure, and by that we mean roads, highways, shipping, airlines. So those are infra that we are talking about, hard structures. But when we talk about infra, we should invest in the human infrastructure also. Human infrastructure would include education, healthcare. So anything, it's about the well-being of the people. If we invest in human infrastructure, physical infrastructure, it will take time to grow. But if we invest in human infrastructure, we are increasing the capability of the human beings. And they can promote and do much more with those capabilities. And the potential of the growth will be very good. So that is what the author is basically implying over here. So, yeah. Now here again, from your eco, I can add one more point. We have been following trickle-down effect. That is, create infrastructure, create industries. With industries will come, industries will employ people, people will get money goes into the development of the people, better standard of living. So that is one approach, trickle-down. But the alternative approach, which was given by Amartya Sen, the Nobel Prize winner, he's saying that we should actually focus on the people itself, enhance their capabilities, and they can open up much more avenues for growth. Plus, their welfare will automatically be taken care of if they are made capable, if they are made empowered to look after themselves. So empower them rather than focusing on this chain of events. So this idea was proposed sometime in 70s. Okay. Now we have some facts. So it's saying that more than 50% of India's population is below the age of 25, and more than 65% is below the age of 35. So it's basically bringing out a paradox that we are a youthful population. We are having a high economic growth, no doubt, but unemployment rate is also very high. So if we improve human infra, we'll be able to address it. And plus, if we improve tier 2 and tier 3 cities, we will have more avenues of growth, and this growth will be scattered or distributed. Second, with reference to tier 2 cities, again, we can connect here. New cities have potential to generate 70% of the country's new jobs and GDP over next 20 years. This is coming from the experience of China and USA. So you can quote this in your answer writing as well. Essay writing also. By the way, these are essays. Opinions are essays only. Moving on to the international section, the world section. I think headlines are sufficient. Japan decided to release this contaminated, radiation contaminated water from Fukushima nuclear plant into the Pacific Ocean. So naturally, the neighboring countries like China and South Korea are not happy with that decision. So now China and South Korea are saying that the fisheries that are coming from Japan, Tokyo, they will not import them. So they will be banned. Seafood coming will be banned. Now Tokyo wants these curbs to be quashed, the curbs from China and South Korea. This is the plane in which Wagner was traveling, Wagner boss. right? So death, nobody has confirmed that he has died actually. It's suspected he has died. Putin did not say he died. He was making a statement that he had a complicated fate, but did not say he died. Western intelligence agencies are not very sure also. Okay. Taiwan to spend $3 billion on new weapons, gets fifth F-16 boost. Okay. So Taiwan, of course, I hope you know, right? Dispute between China and Taiwan. It was almost imminent sometime back in this year that China may invade into Taiwan. Now, I think from world history point of view, the history of the China, from obviously communist movement that was there, that is their part of the syllabus. Besides the emergence of Taiwan, these topics are important from GS1 world history also, that needs to be studied. It was anyways, it is important, but this time all the more. Next, China quietly recruits chip talent as US tightens curbs. Okay, so US has imposed, US President Biden has imposed export curbs on high-end technology, particularly with electronics, semiconductors, etc. So this they have put in onto the US-based companies that we will not supply you because you are emerging as a competitor, plus you are threatening us with so many things. We will not supply you only this, our intellectual property. So what China has been doing was that China previously was doing was that it had a scheme known as Thousands Talents Plan. Thousands Talents Plan. It was a well publicized scheme in which US engineers from at various levels, they were invited to China. They were provided subsidies in buying a home, plus good salaries they were being provided so that they work in for the Chinese companies. Now, with this US tightening curves, TTP, they are not publicizing it, they are not talking about it. They say that we have stopped the scheme, but rather now they have created a new program known as Kimming. I don't know how it is pronounced, Shimming, Kimming, I don't know, but this is the scheme. And Kimming means enlightened. So this scheme is there, it is not publicized, but the same features remain. So talent is being brought in, recruited, but quietly. They're not talking about it. They are not making a fuss about it. I wonder if the same cannot be done in India. Why are we not doing much about it with reference to semiconductors, with reference to critical technologies for climate change, the sunrise sectors? I mean, China is doing it on the government level. Same may be replicated in India's case. Why not? Okay, economy section. So both are with reference to G20 Jaipur meet, this one and this one. So here, first of all, Minister Goyal, he's the Minister for Commerce and Industry. Okay. So he says that we should ease barriers in international trade and investment. Fine. We should ease barriers in international trade and investment. And further, we should focus on, the world community should focus on creating resilient global value chains. This seems important. If we ask us why, how can this be done, then it becomes important. What steps need to be taken at the global level? And by the way, resilient global value chains, this term has come mostly post COVID. When the COVID took place, it came from China. There were bans and all those things. Plus, there was a need felt to move outside of China. So when they talk about resilient global value chains, it means that it is not affected by all these events. It is not affected by the will of one country, which is China may say that it has a dispute with Japan and says that we will not provide you this critical minerals, or we will not supply it to Europe if you say something against us, or to US. So reducing the dependence on, particularly on China, without saying it, without mentioning it, it implies this in a way. Okay, so how? What steps can be taken? So resilient global value chain, it implies in general reducing the dependence on China, particularly semiconductors. So Chip 4 alliance of US is there. This one, Europe is having their own semiconductor alliance. They are working on it. India is wanting to be part of both of these. Okay, so that is one thing. Second, I'm clubbing with this now, is barriers to international trade. So barriers to trade and investment, so that has to be addressed. Custom duties, taxations, those things have to be sorted out. Negotiations, discussions must take place diplomatically. So all that should take place. We have WTO. WTO should be reformed. So these are the main things actually. Okay, moving on. The Prime Minister bats for MSME sector, calls for building inclusive value chains. Now, inclusive again means two things. One is inclusive, that is, value chains should be part of the entire global setup, not just one country, one particular setup. Other thing should be that it should not be restricted to bigger companies. Smaller companies should be also part of it, MSMEs. MSMEs typically employ more labor force, they are less capital intensive. Okay. Now here we have a fact on MSMEs. It is saying that MSMEs play a key role in the global economy. It accounts for 60 to 70% of employment and contributes 50% of the GDP. Similar cases with India also, same facts apply for India as well. Okay, so we have these 2 points. I've discussed this over here. Now let us look at the schemes for promoting the MSME sector. So here they are. We are referring to investindia.gov.in, a government website. And yes, so you have the schemes. You can take a screenshot. A lot of schemes are mentioned over here. Besides, classification of micro, small, and medium enterprises is there. You should know the specific definitions of this. So it's basically on in matters of turnovers. So 1 crore, not more than 1 crore in terms of machinery or equipment, and annual turnover. So machinery should not cost more than 1 crore, turnover not more than 5 crores. Likewise for small, machinery 10 crores and annual turnover not more than 50 crores. Then we have medium, which is machinery 50, annual turnover 250 crores, not more than that. So this you should know for prelims. India US may discuss procurements. I think the headline is sufficient heading. India US meeting is taking place with reference to bilateral trades. They will discuss procurements. Critical minerals supply, which means rare earths, critical, right? All these minerals, strategic minerals, and laptop import curbs. Besides, they will also be discussing about the pending issues at the WTA. Further, India wants, this is important, to be recognized by US as a Trade Agreements Act designated country by US, which should mean that India is a preferred country for trade, right? So India is a preferred country. If that happens, there'll be much better integration with the US economy, or vice versa. US India will have better integration, economy wise speaking. Next, India UK FTA talks in final stage. We have been hearing this from quite some time. Business mobility on the table. Now I was wondering, what is business mobility? One is they are saying as visa liberalization. But let's say, what really does it mean? So business mobility should mean that people are easily able to do business. There are businessmen, Indian businessmen in London. Likewise, Britishers have some company setups in India. So how can they operate with ease, basically? So there should be 3 parameters according to me. So one is people, free movement of people. For that, we need visa liberalization. So that would mean business mobility, of course. Free movement of capital or money, which is investment. Freely money moving from India to England, and likewise from England to India, that should take place. And today there is one more pillar, which is data, information. IT companies are there, so all that. So data, how does it move? We are into the age of electronic world. So data should also be considered. Although these 2 points were not mentioned, only visa liberalization was mentioned. So I'm just adding some dimensions. Moving on to the inflation. So MPC meeting was to take place. They decided on 5-to-1 basis. So that the rate hike is not warranted, even though inflation is very high. But inflation is basically because of supply side concerns. So headline inflation is at 7.44%. Headline is the normal inflation, which includes volatile subjects also. When we remove volatile, it becomes core inflation. So the target is 4% for headline inflation, plus minus 2%. Now they're saying this inflation is high because of increase in commodity prices and food prices, which is basically because of supply side issues. Supply is not coming, so people are forced to pay more. So at the present moment, they have taken up an accommodative stance. That is, they are preferring accommodating growth, and they have decided to keep the interest rates constant. They have not decided to hike it. But gradually, all these members have said that they will withdraw. They will lead in their steps in future will be about withdrawal of accommodation. Their priority will be inflation. Right. So that is the meaning of withdrawal of accommodation. But for the time being, we have an accommodative stance. Okay. Now, one more thing. When we talk about repo rates, etc., these are part of liquidity adjustment facility. Repo rate, SLR, CRR, they are all part of liquidity adjustment facility. Explained section, we can rush through it. ICMR COVID study, key findings on mortality rate, etc., etc. So they're basically talking about long COVID. Yesterday only we did an editorial on the same, which said that 1 year after COVID, Delta variant in particular, 6.5 or 7% people died who were admitted, they died. And people who suffered with COVID, they have this issues of fatigue, breathlessness, brain fog. So all those issues are also there. Okay. And ISRO veteran speaks what Chandrayaan 3 success means for India. So I think that you can do yourself. You can, even without reading, you can mention 3-4 points as to why was it important. So this is it for today's analysis.